Once again, welcome back, friends and fellow citizens, and thank you for the visit. Mac here with the fourth video of Over the last couple of videos, we have discovered, first, the difference between general and specific words, second, how context can affect those words, third, some of the rules of statutory construction, and fourth, how those rules function. And as always, I presented the
closing question.
But before answering the closing question from episode 3, let's take a look at some of your comments and questions from that video. Finally, I have a question. It comes from a friend of mine by the name of Craig. Hi, Craig. Yes, I still have my cell phone on the back of my hat, my boonie cap as it were. I'm glad you liked the video and appreciate both your visit and participation. Another question was presented in person by a local friend. And you know who you are. Yes, my last video was a little underproduced compared to the first two. Not that they were Oscar-winning material. I did this intentionally to see if anyone was actually paying attention, and it worked. Thanks for the visit and especially for paying attention. Finally, another question presented in person. Why have I never heard of such a thing as the rules of statutory construction? Where did you learn about them? I suspect that the primary reason for never having heard of these rules is the fact that they are not a part of the curriculum in our middle or high schools, public or private. These subjects are relegated to the curriculum of universities, and then only if you're pursuing an education in the field of law. While I did not go to college, I did pursue an education in criminal and constitutional law, and it's not as complex as some people would have you to believe. If you do not believe me, stick around and watch these videos. Also, keep in mind that it isn't always what you learn, so much as what you are willing to unlearn. Thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to do so. Now, back to the video, where we're about to review and answer the closing question from episode 3. Before we get to it, allow me to preface the question with the following. Remember the rule of lenity from the last video, and how under this rule courts are required to interpret any ambiguity or vagueness in a criminal statute strictly in favor of the defendant and against the state. Keep this in mind because if a strict mode of interpretation is necessary in order to protect an individual citizen from improper criminal prosecution and conviction, does it not stand to reason that the absolute strictest mode of interpretation is necessary in order to protect an entire nation of people from foreign or domestic tyranny? That being said, let's take a look at the closing question from episode 3. Do you know which rule of statutory construction is meant to be employed when interpreting our Constitution? The answer to this question is that the absolute strictest rule of statutory construction is the one which is meant to be employed when interpreting our Constitution. Of the rules listed in episode 3, they all look pretty strict, but which one is the strictest? Let's do a quick recap of those rules. The Four Corners Doctrine, a very strict rule in that it does not permit extrinsic evidence when settling contract disputes. Noscitur associus, Latin meaning it is known by its associates. This rule is used to narrow the meaning of unclear words by comparing them to other words with which they are associated. Ejusdem generis, Latin meaning of the same kind. Similar to Noscitur associus, this rule narrows the meaning of unclear words to the same general kind or class as those specifically mentioned. In pari materia, Latin meaning on the same subject. A rule of interpretation holding that the meaning of an ambiguous or unclear law can be determined in the light of other statutes on the same subject matter, dealing with laws as opposed to words. Expressio Unius Est Exclusio Alterius, Latin meaning the expression of one thing is the exclusion of another, or a specification of particulars is an exclusion of generals. This rule prohibits the generalization of anything that is specifically expressed. The presumption of anything other than what is specifically written is not permitted. When the words of a law are clear and well defined, there is no room for speculation. Unless an exception is specifically written into the law, it means exactly what it expresses and nothing else. The rule of lenity, Latin or Old French meaning gentleness or kindness. This rule requires courts to strictly interpret any ambiguity or uncertainty in a criminal statute in favor of the defendant and against the state. Generalia specialibus non derogant, Latin meaning things general do not derogate from things special. This rule is applicable only when there is a conflict between a general and a specific word, term, or phrase. When such a conflict arises, the specific provision will prevail. Of this short list of rules, which is the rule intended to be used when interpreting our Constitution? The only rule which is actually available in this short list is Expressio Unius Est Exclusio Alterius. You may be wondering, what makes Mac think that this rule is the appropriate one, or the only one? The answer is simple. Why would the colonists petition the king and his mob for a redress of a huge list of grievances, then go to war with the king and his mob for ignoring those petitions, then declare themselves independent of the king and his mob, then create a document of laws for the express purpose of controlling a brand new form of government, only to turn around and word that governing document in such sloppy language as to permit a wide variety of interpretations? That does not make sense, does it? Fact is, they didn't, and we must not allow anyone to teach our children otherwise. Language which permits a wide range of interpretations would allow the future elected servants of our new government to conduct themselves in exactly the same manner as the king and his mob, or in any other manner they so desire. All that would be necessary to completely sidestep the supreme law of the land would be to allow a group of greedy, self-serving tyrants to interpret the supreme law in whatever manner they desire. If we allow our elected or appointed servants to do this, what point is there in having laws to begin with? If our elected servants cannot abide strictly by the laws set forth for them, what reason is there for the people to abide by the laws which they create for us? I think we have established that the strictest mode of interpretation can be the only one permitted when reading our Constitution. Let's start bringing this video to a close. Now, since we know that the judges in every state are tasked with the job of interpreting our Constitution in the strictest mode possible, and that they are bound by the Constitution, varying opinions should not be possible, should they? That being the case, let's present the closing question for this video. Is there any evidence which proves that our Constitution was intended to be interpreted through the use of the rule of statutory construction known as Expressio Unius Est Exclusio Alterius? That about wraps it up for this video. As always, please take the time to like, subscribe, enable notifications for future videos, and share them with your friends with the appropriate buttons below. Especially first-time viewers, then watch these videos from the beginning. Don't forget to visit understandingourconstitution.cloud and download the transcribed documents used in support of these videos. They're free, unless you would like to make a donation. You don't necessarily have to download them, but you can read them. Once again, friends and fellow citizens, thank you for the visit, and as always, I look forward to your return too.